When I was young, we always did the balance test in the back of the car.
I know. I learned it from all the old guys.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. On this episode of Sam's Garage, Low Car Performance has another product to demo for vehicle safety and storage. Sam and Doug start the process of replacing the rear shocks on the Saleen Mustang project. Phil's 72 Cutlass receives a new EFI system and exhaust manifolds. Then Sam installs a new wiring harness in his one-off Chevy truck project. Travis and Jeffrey from Low Car Performance bring their remote battery disconnect lever kit to Sam's Garage. The kit is designed to allow the driver to enable or disable the switch remotely from the interior. The switch can also be used in conjunction with a fire system kill switch.
All right, chutes are ready. Wheelie bars are ready. Go ahead and crank it up. Let's make this pass.
All right. Travis!
You don't have any power.
The switch again.
Oh,
Man, how many times do we have to go through this? Do we have a solution for this?
Yeah, we've had it for 15 years. We just need to put it on the car, and I think that's why we're here.
Let's put it on. So a battery cutoff switch on the outside looks basically just like a big toggle switch designed to handle high amperage. And that's going to turn on and off the power going through the car. This car has a standalone 16, maybe an 18 volt battery, no alternator. If you guys are running an alternator in a standard 14 or 12 volt battery, you're going to have to take the alternator's charging field wire on the back side of the switch going to the switch and not the battery. Because if the alternator is still hooked up to the battery side of the switch and you turn the switch off, the alternator is going to keep the car running. No different than you've seen some mechanics go to change a battery, but they don't want to clear the memories of the car. They'll have the car running, take off the battery post, pull out the battery, change it real fast, and put the post back on. That's really bad for your car. Puts the alternator in full field. Well, that keeps the car running. No different than if you were in a horrible situation and you needed that car to turn off. You have to make sure that the alternator's battery wire is on the right side of the switch so that when you turn it off, the alternator power does not go to the battery, and the 12 volt signal power to turn on the regulator to the alternator is also on the same side of the switch for redundancy to make sure that alternator turns off when you shut off the switch.
You know, with these kits, we offer 125 and 300 amp switches, as well as you can get it without a switch. If you wanted to buy one of our switches later, we sell them separate, along with the cable.
I had the switch with the removable red key.
Oh.
So if you have that, you have to replace your switch because there's nowhere to hook up the low car kit to it.
I see.
But man, I'd give up that locking one for this any day because the convenience here is absolutely priceless.
Right.
We're talking multiple times I've done it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I understand. It happens.
We've got a bracket to hold the cable in place that we've run up to the shifter inside the car. I'm going to take off the side plate on the shifter. We're going to bolt through the back side of the plate. Just make sure to keep your shifter assembly together instead of having to fight that. Before anything comes apart, put the plate back on. Put them on each side of the handle. Orient the handle the direction you'd like. Take the countersunk bolt, the washer. We'll fasten that. We're going to take our cable. We'll be able to clamp it here, and we'll be able to attach it to the inside of the handle. Whether you're suited up in the car and you need to just turn power on, get going, or if you're going down through the end of the track, something happens, kill your chutes, kill your power, you don't have anything else to worry about. You're not going to have an electric fuel pump keep running if you've wrecked, or even maybe if the engine even started to over rev and throttle hang, kill power, much more beneficial. Mounts directly right here next to the shifter. Quick, easy access, out of the way, right within hand's reach of where you're already at.
You know, Travis, for decades, low car performance has always been about convenience. But lately, we've been showing a lot of safety from low car performance.
Yes, absolutely we have. From the Heather tethers all the way to the battery disconnect, grab handles even.
The locking dipsticks you're working on right now.
Exactly, yes.
Pretty cool.
Have you got that wrench?
Yeah, I got a wrench. Julie's working it for us.
It's the right one, right?
We'll ask for a 1/2 inch, but we can make it work. It's adjustable. Nice shirt. Where'd you get that shirt?
Lowcar.com.
Really? Is that right?
Yeah, check out our website, lowcar.com, grab a catalog, grab some shirts, check out our new product.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam and Doug continue the maintenance portion of the Saleen Mustang project. This episode, they tackled the rear quadra shocks that help stabilize the rear end. Even though this Mustang has low miles, the shocks were in need of being replaced.
Well, Doug, you ready to do the rear?
Well, yeah, Sam, I've already gotten my tire off, and it was pretty easy, so I wanted to see how you were doing with yours.
You know, I try to get help from him, but it's really hard. So we're gonna do the rear shocks. The quadra shocks are even saline. I was shocked at that, because normally back in the day, we used to take the quadra shocks off.
Yeah.
And just leave them. But they're also saline. This one is completely empty of oil.
Right.
That one is rusted, but we don't have the rear shocks yet, right?
No,
So we're
we
gonna
don't.
put some shocks on there for the rear, and then when the
Right.
saline rears come on, we're gonna go ahead and replace them. So this way we can show everyone how to replace a shock on a Mustang.
Yeah, and that's a real good plan, Sam.
Shocks are holding the rear end up. We got everything loose. We've kept the hardware in the bottom of the shock. We're gonna bring the car down, go into the trunk, pull the 2 top nuts off, holding the rear end with a jack, and that way we can pull the shocks down from the bottom.
Oh, these are Carreras.
So do you think the rest of them are Carrera as well?
That might be, I don't know. I was surprised when I saw that on.
So Fresh and I have the new rear shocks in, but the quadra shocks are not in because we got new ones coming from Saleen.
Right,
All
yeah.
4. But look at this shock. This one is completely, all the oil's on the outside, it's completely bad, and this one just looks bad. But this thing's only got 42,000 miles on it. So let's say I went and got an oil change, and I asked everyone to do a visual inspection. We're gonna take a look at the shocks, and we're gonna see a dry shock. It's 42,000 miles. Visually, it looks like there's no oil on the outside. This should be good, right? But it's not. It won't even rebound. And you would have never known it by doing a visual inspection. So this is where doing a bounce, the old bounce method,
Right.
to see how it's gonna rebound, is gonna tell you whether your shocks are good or bad. And it's important to have good shocks because there's a stability of your handling. So now we're gonna put the car back together again, but we're gonna leave everything on the liners on the trunk out. I got a convertible top guy coming to do the new top because there's a rip in this one. And then I got new shocks coming, so there's no point in putting the trunk back together when I gotta take it apart to replace these 2 new ones.
Yeah, you know, guys, when you're driving your car on down the road, sometimes you'll feel it kind of wants to, you know, roll around a little bit. It's the shocks. Make sure you always go through these procedures. That'll save you a lot of time, effort, and the car will be a lot safer.
And take the time to do what you did, which is clean the whole trunk floor. It wasn't bad, it was very dusty, but now it looks so good, it looks new.
Yeah.
You know, little things like that make a big difference. Doug and I are moving right along with the maintenance on our Saleen project. What we did now is the rear suspension, the shocks and the quadra shocks, waiting for the quadra shocks to come in. This is the perfect time to do a visual inspection and take a look at everything you may need.
Yeah, you know, Sam, the amazing thing on this car is looking at everything. You know, we've done a lot of interesting projects over the years. What I'm really enjoying about this one, everything is so nice. Everything I'm looking at, other than the age onto it, it's in fabulous shape. It's really, really been good.
What you want to do is you want to take a look at the brake pads, look for uneven wear. You want to look at the rotors and look for any grooving, any ledges. This thing is perfect. The slides are working good. The brakes look good. 50% still left in the rear, 75 in the front.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. I mean, but you know what that tells me? Somebody drove with the handbrake on.
Yeah. Now do me a favor and turn the wheel left to right a couple times. All right, so take a look at the steering shaft and tell me what's moving and what's not moving as I turn the wheel. So one of the biggest complaints on these old cars is going to be steering shaft play. You'll have about an inch, inch and a half of play. When you turn the wheel, the front wheels will not move. Some of the new cars, depending on the mileage, will have the same problem. The new cars have U-joints. These old cars may have a U-joint, most likely a rag joint at the steering box. So all you gotta do is have one person inside the car, turn the steering wheel slightly to where the play window is, with the wheels on the ground, engine not running, and look and see what's moving and what's not. If you have a steering shaft going straight solid to the rag joint to the box, you're gonna look and see if the rag joint is moving or if it's not moving. Or if the rag joint is moving and the box is not moving. That's going to tell you where the play is. If you have a couple of joints in line, what you want to do is look at each point where there's a joint and look and see if there's a shaft moving or not moving before or after a point. That's going to tell you exactly where the play is. That's going to save you money when you go to the shop and have your car repaired.
Welcome back to more Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU. Phil helped Sam install the new PSI conversion EFI system in his 72 Oldsmobile Cutlass 442 project. The transmission will be controlled with a separate system from Performa-Built Transmissions.
This is the week that Phil and I make his car make noise. Now, I want him to be nice and reliable no matter where in the country he is, no matter who drives the car. I want it to be running like a GM crank everywhere. So we went to PSI Conversions and we got a complete LT1 controller kit, utilizes a factory GM computer for reliability, a complete standalone engine harness with its own fuse block. Since we're running a 4L60 transmission from Performa-Built Transmissions, we have to run a separate standalone to control the transmission because these engines only come with a 6 or an 8-speed transmission. This is going to be really nice, fly-by-wire with its own pedal as well. So I don't want to hear any complaints from anyone in the family.
She won't complain. Let's get at it. Red to red, black to black. Let's make it go.
Sometimes I like to confuse people and go red to black, black to red, just to see what happens.
I'll point that out as it happens. Okay, we got our harness out. We're getting ready to install it, and Sam's looking at a wiring diagram, and we're going to label everything so it goes smoothly, not only for Sam, but to help me, because I'm going to help him, and it's going to be a lot easier to match up numbers with the drawing once we get it over the hood.
Phil Pataki from Car Capsule and I are putting an LT1 Gen 5 engine in his Oldsmobile. Anytime I do an engine swap like this, I like to separate the powertrain from the car. I'm going to use the switch power, ground, and power from the battery to power up my powertrain, but I'm not going to go into the room to tell it that I have an engine swap. So it's very important that when you guys are dismantling your original engine and removing the wires, you label the wires. There's only about 8 to 10 wires on these old cars. Sending unit, alternator, got a power to the starter. But these old cars use the junction of the starter as the junction for power to the starter and then from the starter to the body. So very easily when you remove your engine and put the new one back in, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to use the post on the starter as a junction to power up the EFI, the room, and power from the battery. Don't forget to fuse your power wire because a lot of these cars, you know, they'll have old wiring on the cabin on the inside, or maybe someone will mess up the wiring when rewiring the car, and you want to protect your investment by simply adding a main fuse from the battery, 12 to 18 inches, to the fuse, and then go power up the car from there. It's going to be very easy. If you do this right, you'll have less time in hooking up the new wires onto the car because you will have labeled everything and you know exactly what path you need to take. Phil and I are making a lot of headway on his Oldsmobile. We've got the PSI conversion full EFI kit installed. Your power is only as good as your ground is. So most cars you see from back in the day, they've got the battery grounded to the engine and they got one chassis ground. I like to put 2 chassis grounds just in case one fails. When you only have one, it's working really hard, it gets resistance, heats up, it gets corroded. So therefore your car is not going to work very well. Very important. Fuel, cooling, electrical, we got the powertrain, LT1 swap, full chassis, not the frame, But there's a lot of variables here. Anytime you guys are buying aftermarket parts, 9 out of 10 times you got to modify what is already for your application, let alone when you start to mix 10 items together and you got a hodgepodge of parts, you really have to use your head, modify some stuff. For instance, I went to Vintage Air, got us some fittings, and we were able to adapt the factory AC unit to the Sandin compressor with the LT1 engine. So the car has the factory AC, everything works, we've changed the fittings, there are no leaks, so he should be nice and cool as he rolls in and out of his showcase.
With the top down.
So next we're gonna bring this thing down, we've got fuel in it. Like I said, I gotta run a fuel wire. We're gonna crank it up, we're gonna put the wheels on it, we're gonna roll it out, and we're gonna see what it looks like rolling into the Car Capsule showcase.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU. Sam starts a new project by installing a new Painless Performance wiring harness in his custom truck project called the Chevy HEMI. The truck is a Chevy body that sits on a 99 S10 frame. To power this truck, a 2007 5.7 liter HEMI engine from Dodge sits between the frame rails.
This is gonna be one cool project. Last season, you guys saw this in the background. This season, we're gonna be putting it together. This is called the Brothers Chevy HEMI project because we're going to Brothers Truck Parts and we're gonna be filling this thing up with everything in their catalog to get it ready to go for the road. Now, this is a 1949 Chevy that sits on a 99 S10 chassis. And inside the hood is a HEMI engine 5.7 liter from a 2007 Dodge Ram. At least I picked the truck. Now, for all you guys who are upset that I put a HEMI in there, don't worry, it's gonna have a Ford filter. This is completely bare, there isn't a single wire in it, and before you start any project, you have to have the foundation, which is the wiring system. That's why I went to Painless Performance products, because they do the very best in getting you a wiring system that's one, easy to install, easy to read, and it's gonna function properly for the life of this truck. It's best to unpin it from the back of the fuse block, pull the wires out of the harness so that you can condense your harness. This is the great thing about a custom harness from Painless Performance product is you can customize it. They give you plenty of length. Every wire is completely labeled to the very tip, every 12 to 18 inches. So you can't go wrong. Gotta wear your glasses though. I call them wisdom goggles. So the first thing I did was put everything in branches and labeled them. What's gonna go to the engine bay, the rear of the truck, ignition switch, headlight switch, ignition power. Then I mounted my fuse block in a spot where I can easily access it, I can easily read it, get to my fuses, my relay, and take care of business that way. The second thing I did was run my front leg for the engine bay that's going to power my engine, coil, and my lights out the front through a grommet. Always make sure to use a grommet because you don't want to have any frayed wires on the metal. It's going to pop fuses and cause a lot of electrical problems. Send the leg to the back of the truck for the lights in the back and the fuel sending units through another grommet through the hole in the bottom of the truck so that it goes to the back. Then I've got my branches here. Take my ignition switch power so I can power up the fuse block and then take care of each branch one at a time. I've condensed my painless wire harness a lot because there's a lot of stuff I'm not using. For instance, if you remember earlier, there was a huge bundle of wires coming out of here. Well, that's all the sending unit wires, everything on the engine that I'm not going to be using. All I'm going to use is the headlight section, which is the high beam, low beam, and turn signals. They break off left and right, so make sure you read it. Go to this side, go underneath your core support, hide the wires, then go to your right side. The brake wire, which is right here, the white wire. The orange wire is on the inside. It's gonna power up the brake switch. This is gonna go to my brake switch, which is on mine. I'm using the one mounted on the master cylinder. The other pole is gonna go to ground. And then I've got my alternator wires. I'm running a factory Mopar alternator. It's a 2-wire deal. So I'm running a 2-wire to my alternator. It's a Mopar alternator. The first one's the exciter. It's gonna turn on the regulator. The second wire is to tell the indicator on the dashboard that we've got voltage. Now all I gotta do is cut this up, loom it up, distribute it to the headlights, and then this is my rear section. It's gonna be the fuel sending unit and the tail lights left and right along with the reverse lights. Wiring up a custom vehicle, it's going to take a long time. It's a little bit painful, but Painless Performance harnesses, they make it much easier for you. Take your time, make sure you do a good job, loom everything, route everything like you need to. Everything's in place for me to continue with the build. I've even got the switch panel all wired up. I'm using that switch panel basically as an ignition switch and a headlight switch. Now next week what I'm going to do is hook up the battery, run power and ground, function test the Painless Performance harness, and then we're going to continue on with all the lights.
Be sure to check out Sam's Garage on these other media platforms. Send us questions and feedback to info@samsgaragetv.com. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Sam's Garage. The Low Car team showcased their battery disconnect system. Sam and Doug made progress on replacing the rear shocks of the Mustang. Sam was able to install the EFI system in Phil's Cutlass. Then Sam introduced us to his new Chevy HEMI project this season.